again for another 5-minute murder. I'm going to draw a card. We're going to get started. Oh, and today we got another mobster. We got Vito Genovese, who is just fantastic. I love the mafia, especially the early mob here in the United States. So Vito Genovese was born on November 21st, 1897. He died on February 14th, 1969. He was an Italian-American mobster who rose to power during Prohibition as an enforcer in the mafia. A longtime associate and childhood friend of Charles Lucky Luciano, Genovese took part in the Castellamare War and helped shape the rise of the mafia and organized crime in the United States. He would later lead Luciano's crime family, which was renamed the Genovese crime family in his namesake. Genovese died in prison on February 14th, 1969. So, not unlike a lot of crime figures, mafia guys, hitmen, the life of crime ends up in a prison cell at some point, and Genovese was no different. He did run the mob for a very long time from prison. Genovese, especially early on, was known as that. He was known as an enforcer. He was not necessarily the brains guy, even though he was a smart guy. He was more of the brute, right? He was the enforcer. He took care of things when they needed to be taken care of. During the Castellamare War, he was the one that went in and did the hit on the two old mustache Petes. You had I don't know why I always forget their names every time I talk about this, but you had Big Joe, Joe Maranzano, and you had Masseria, or maybe it was Joe Masseria and Maranzano. So those were the two big mustache Petes at the time, and Vito Genovese had a huge hand in getting rid of both of them, right? One of them they kill eating dinner, and gun him down. They walk in and they gun him down while he's eating his plate of spaghetti, right? That's the famous scene from the movie. I think the movie's called Mobsters, but I have it here. It's up on my shelf over there. So it's a great movie depicting the early forming of the mafia. And you have Lucky Luciano in there, you have Meyer Lansky, you have Vito Genovese, and you have I always forget his name too, the one that went out to Vegas and started Vegas. He's in there as well. Bugsy Siegel. So the four of them were the ones that really started everything. And they would end up, going under the wing of Maranzano and then killing Masseria and then double-crossing Maranzano to then take over the entire mafia at the time and then create the five families. And instead of it just being two families or a few thugs here and there that had different territories, they would create the five families. They would create the commission. And of course, Luciano's original family would be turned into the Genovese family after he is deported and has to step down. And Luciano goes to Italy and lives the rest of his days out there, and Genovese takes over. Now, the movie, The Godfather, Vito Corleone, very much based off of, obviously, Vito Genovese, the crime family there. Lots and lots of references back and forth. Of course, you have the singer in that is very closely related to Frank Sinatra. So there's a lot of parallels in the movie with real life. And so it's a fascinating movie. I don't know if anybody that hasn't watched The Godfather, it's iconic. but it is, that first real look that we had into what the mafia was. And, it's a very romanticized version of that, but it is a great, great movie. Before that, you had movies like Scarface and stuff where that were not very accurate as far as, storytelling. But The Godfather was like the first one out there that really gave you a glimpse into how the mob worked and how they thought and how they committed their crimes and stuff. And it spawned a whole generation of people. I grew up on the East Coast. So living on the East Coast, being in a family that had Italian ties, that had some mob ties, growing up in that, it was a very romanticized version of the mafia, right? We all believed that, they were all, we only killed our own. We only kill people that wrong us. And, when in actuality, everybody robbed everybody blind. Didn't matter who you were. If you were working for somebody, you were always taking a little bit and stealing from everybody. And then when you got caught, they got rid of you, right? So, it was very different in reality to what it was in the movies and what you see today. We get a very romanticized version of all of that stuff. And, movies like The Godfather, Casino, Goodfellas, even though Goodfellas did a better job of like actually portraying how kind of gritty and backstabby the mob was. But then you have, Scarface is another movie that really, really spurred a whole generation of people in the 90s to, want to get into this like gangster lifestyle. So like it very much romanticized, everybody's making money. We're finding, we're doing all this stuff, living this lavish lifestyle. And then really what you find out is you end up in jail, you end up dead. Most of the mob guys lived in less than middle class neighborhoods, right? They did not have a huge ton of money unless you were the top guy. Very similar to business, right? You work for a company and a corporation, and the dude at the top is making $4 million a year. The guys down at the bottom that are actually doing all the work making, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 a year, right? And they're the ones that are breaking their back. But the guy at the top has figured it all out and is pulling all the strings, right? Very similar to the structure. And, of course, back in Vito Genovese's day, the mob was very, very much into prostitution and gambling. They were all dabbling in the drug trade, even though a lot of them would say that they weren't. They were all dabbling in that because that's where all the real money was. And so they were all doing all of that stuff. And, now it's very, very different. The mafia is largely, we'd like to think that they're gone, but in actuality, they moved into a lot of legitimate businesses. There's a lot more scamming of, big business and stocks and the stock market and credit card scams and stuff like that versus the old style prostitution gambling thing, right? They basically got themselves kicked out of Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is owned by corporations now. Not by mob families like it was in the 60s. So, things have changed, but the mafia is still there. They've adapted to the current layout. They will always be looking for different scams to make money. And so they'll always be there. There will always be this dark underbelly of our society that is out there to make money off of you and me. This idea that we got from the movies that they're like Robin Hood, right? They're going to steal from the rich and give to the poor is a fallacy. They're all in it for themselves. They all want to make money for themselves. And, honestly, it's no different than all of us, right? We all want to do that. We all want to make money and be able to live comfortably and enjoy our lives. We don't want to be crushed by society and the government and everybody else where we can't make money and live the lives that we want to live. We want to be able to take time off. We want to be able to go on a vacation. We want to go home and enjoy our lives and not be able to have to struggle. So, It's that, I think, is the American dream, and not so much other things. Anyway, that's a whole different philosophical thing, but the mafia is always fascinating. Genovese crime family, still very much a crime family, right? They still have people today, and that all started with Vito Genovese, and consequently Lucky Luciano before him. And there you go. There's another 5-minute murder, closer to 10 minutes, but I talked about all kinds of stuff. Thank you guys for joining us. I will see you next week. Sorry I'm a little bit late. I got another tardy slip. I think I like getting them. Maybe that's the problem. Anyway, talk to y'all soon. Have you ever wanted to be a detective, to investigate the crime scene and catch the criminal? Well, welcome to Death, New Mexico, a town just off the famous Route 666. A pretty quiet town until recently. There have been a string of murders. In the social deduction game, The Profiler, you have 60 minutes to investigate the crime scene, interrogate your witnesses, and determine who the killer is and what kind of killer they are to win. What will happen when you become the Profiler?
Without me, I said